Chapter 26: The Full Violence of a Problem. With Akino and Sona. Sona saw that man who seemed to be one of the fallen angels who had a high ranking. Sona knows him from the number of wings behind him. So you're right. Sona saw kokubael with a calm gaze. Right, he is kokubael, one of the tallest fallen angels, said the priest. And you are? Sona then guessed the reverend. I'm Valper Galilei, said Valper. Sona just smiled to understand. Kiba seemed to see Valper like having a certain grudge. Akino sees Kiba with a sense of wonder. What is it, Kiba? Asked Akino. It's nothing, replied Kiba, lying. Sona still sees Valper and kokubael with a neutral look without fear. So what exactly is your goal? Asked Sona. Of course it evokes a sacred sword, Valper said. Not that, what I mean is, what is your real purpose after awakening a sacred sword? Asked Sona again. Kokubael smiled at the question from Sona, who seemed to be worried. Kokubael then laughed at the question from Sona. Sona's confused. Ha 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 ha, it turns out you did not want to say yes, devil, said Kokubael. Well, I'll tell you, I want to create a big war again, said Kokubael. Sona was surprised at the words of Kokubael, who wanted a great war like it would have been repeated again. Issei and the rest of it now feel confusion now to fight the angels fell before them. Sona then smiled confidently and confirmed her glasses correctly. Akino and the others looked at Sona thinking if she had a plan. Sona then looked at Akino. Did you call your butcho? Asked Sona. Already, he will come with Luffy-kun, Akino said. So, maybe the Straw Hat Boy could be very helpful right now, said Sona to believe in Luffy. What are you talking about? Are you not worried about the current situation? Freed said to the Sona group. Sona then smiled at Freed, who seemed to underestimate them. Sona then looked at Kokubael again. So where do you raise this sacred sword? Asked Sona frankly. Kokubael then smiled at the question from Sona. You are curious? Well, I'll show her place, Kokubael, and pointed toward her side to the city. Sona and the others looked at the directions pointed out by Kokubael. It's Sona and the others are shocked to look at the directions pointed out by Kokubael, who turned point toward the cow school. Right, we'll raise the sacred sword there, said Kokubael. Sona does not know what to say. Where is the closest place to human settlement? If there is a slight disturbance, people will know them. Sona then looked at Kokubael. Do you want to resurrect the sacred sword near human settlements? Do not joke, you can make them see you, said Sona. Why do I care about? If they see me, I'll just kill them, said Kokubael casually. Sona feels frustrated with the nature of Kokubael, who, in his own way, takes his human life. I am one of the fallen angels who survived the Great War. I'm going to make another big war that will make the world shake. Ha 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 ha, laughed Kokubael with enthusiasm. Sona and the others did not know what to do. In front of them was one of the greatest fallen angels. They could not possibly defeat him. Unlucky, what we have to do, said Issei with caution. I do not know, he's not the angel's downfall, said Saji. Kokubael looked at Sona again with a sly smile, thinking that Sona is now in confusion because the place where the sacred sword was in a place it should not. Well, I'll start raising this sacred sword. Kokubael then disappeared with both his men. Those who saw them disappeared were worried because they would start raising the sacred sword and start a big war again. Damn, they're headed to the school, said Issei. We must also get there, said Sona firmly. When they wanted to go to the cow school, suddenly appeared teleport magic near them. In the teleport of the teleport appeared two familiar ones. Seen two men, one woman, a male stone. Butcho, said Akino, realizing who came. Are you guys okay? Asked Riaz. We're okay, Butcho answered Issei. Nice. Riaz is thankful because they are all right. Akino then looked beside Riaz when there was Luffy. Akino then smiled sweetly at Luffy, who was wearing nightwear. Luffy, why are you wearing nightwear? Asked Akino. Luffy then sees his own clothes and realizes that he is wearing sleeping pads. Luffy could not get Ayano's dad's clothes because Riaz was so quick to get him out of bed. Oh, it was Riaz, so I did not get to wear Ayano's father's clothes, replied Luffy plainly. Dressing up then sighing to see the innocent Luffy, Akino and the others then laughed at Luffy. Sona just sighed, sighing, also saw Luffy, who had a stupid nature that always made her dizzy. Actually, what happened? Asked Riaz. We found a building that seemed to be associated with the sacred sword. We fought a crazy pastor that day, but then came a priest who was aimed at awakening the sacred sword, said Akino. Why do they want to raise a sacred sword? asked Rias again. Because they want to make another big battle. Zenovia then suddenly joined the conversation. Rias looked at Zenovia, who seems exhausted. Luffy sees Zenovia and was happy because he hasn't seen her in a while. "Oh Zenov, how are you?" said Luffy. Zenovia then felt irritated with Luffy for giving her a strange name. Luffy was seen smiling at Zenovia. Rias and the other then smiled at Luffy, who was so friendly. "Where's your friend?" asked Luffy to Zenovia. Zenovia then surprised to remember Irina, who seemed to be separated when running to this place. Issei also realized Irina. Issei then ran for Irina. "Wait Issei." Rias then tried to stop Issei, but Issei was far. Rias then sighed to see Issei. "I'll help him." Suddenly Luffy then ran after Issei to help him. Zenovia also ran after Luffy and Issei. Rias saw the three just sighing. Rias and then looked at Sona with a stare. "What does the word mean?" Rias asked Sona about the word Zenovia. "The point is that there is one of the fallen angels who will rise to the sacred sword to begin a great war again in this world," Sona said with a detailed explanation. Rias then surprised to hear the words from Sona. "If this happens, then something will happen that will make the world troubled. So we have to stop him," said Rias. Sona then nodded to understanding Rias. Rias looked at her peerage, who seemed to be getting ready to fight again. "What about Issei and Luffy-kun?" asked Akino. "They will follow later," said Rias. "Luffy is the one who knows what to do, he'll follow us." Akino and Kaneko then nodded to understand while Kiba was silent. Kiba called Rias. Kiba then was shocked when Butcho called his name. Kiba then looked at his Butcho. Rias felt weird with Kiba, who seemed to have such a time problem. "Are you okay?" asked Rias. "I'm fine Butcho," replied Kiba. Rias looked at Kiba thinking that Kiba was lying, then closing her eyes thinking that Kiba would be okay. "All right, we have to go to school right now," Rias said firmly. "Good Butcho," said the remaining peerage makeup. X. With Issei and Luffy. Issei is now running to figure out the presence of Irina that seems to disappear. Luffy follows Issei from behind. Zenovia follows the two men looking for Irina. Zenovia sees Luffy, who seems so caring for Issei and Irina. "Irina, where are you?" shouts Issei. Luffy follows Issei from behind. Luffy then realizes that someone is following him, then looks back to see Zenovia. "Oh Zenov," said Luffy looking at Zenovia behind her. "Do not call me that way," screamed Zenovia. Luffy then laughed to see Zenovia's funny expression. Zenovia feels quite comfortable with Luffy, who is so cheerful in contrast with her stoic nature. "Irina!" Issei shouted. Luffy and Zenovia heard Issei shouting, then ran towards Issei, who was heading to the body of someone lying on the ground. Zenovia then realized that the woman lying on it was Irina, full of wounds. "Irina!" Zenovia shouted, then headed toward Irina quickly. Luffy ran behind Issei, Issei carrying Irina full of wounds. Luffy saw Irina full of wounds and wondered. "What happened to her? Who did this?" asked Luffy. "Freed," Zenovia replied. Luffy then gets annoyed by the man named Freed. Luffy then looks at Issei, who seems to feel sorry for Irina. "Irina, did you hear me?" Issei tried to awake Irina. Irina then opened her eyes after hearing Issei's so-called fear that Irina was so worried. "Oh Issei-kun," said Irina to see Issei, who saw her. "Are you okay?" Issei asked again. "I'm okay," Irina replied in a soft voice. "We have to treat it immediately," said Zenovia. Luffy saw Irina, who had serious injuries, then had an idea. Luffy thought to take Irina to Ayano's house to be kept by Ayano. "Master Luffy," a girl's voice shouted from above the sky. Luffy and the others looking towards the sky to see who called Luffy. "Master Luffy, are you okay?" Rainer and Kalauerner are flying towards Luffy. "Oh Rainer, Kalauerner," said Luffy to see the two fallen angels. Issei, who saw Rainer and Kalauerner, then issued his gauntlet to attack Rainer. Rainer was surprised to see Issei there with her master and then released her spear. Luffy sees Rainer, who seems to want to fight with Issei. Luffy looks at Issei with a look of inquiry. "What's wrong, Rainer?" asked Luffy. Luffy then looked towards Issei, who also seemed to want to fight with Rainer and Kalauerner, while Zenovia was seen seeing the two fallen angels with probable gaze. "Calm down, he's my friend," said Luffy to Rainer. Issei, Zenovia and the two fallen angels were shocked to hear Luffy. Luffy then looked at Issei again with a smile. "Does she know you, Luffy?" said Issei. "Right, she's my friend," said Luffy to Issei. Issei then nodded understanding. Rainer then removed her spear and headed towards Issei with her face bowed. Issei sees Rainer then only confused. "I'm sorry," said Rainer suddenly. Issei was surprised to hear Rainer who suddenly apologized. "I'm sorry for what I did to you," said Rainer. Issei was surprised by the words from Rainer. Rainer apologized to Issei for having killed him and lying on the first encounter. Luffy then laughed to see Rainer apologizing. Luffy was so happy when his friend apologized when she was completely wrong. Issei then saw Rainer with his gaze intimidating. Issei then sighed. "Well, I'm sorry for you," Issei said calmly. Rainer was calm because she had been forgiven by Issei. Luffy smiled at seeing Rainer having started associating with Issei. Zenovia saw Luffy who seemed to be happy when Fallen apologized. "So we're all going to be friends?" Luffy shouted happily. Issei just smiled stiffly towards Luffy. Rainer and Kalauern are smiling smoothly to see Luffy while Zenovia still does not understand Luffy's thinking. Making a devil and two fallen friends seemed bizarre to her. "Well, Rainer, Kalauern, I need your help," said Luffy. Rainer and Kalauern then saw Luffy who seemed to need their help. "What can we help you, Master Luffy?" Rainer asked. "Can you bring Irina home?" asked Luffy, pointing at Irina. Rainer saw the woman who seemed hurt pretty badly like a fight. "Luffy is all right," Rainer said. Rainer then carried Irina to take her to Ayano. Rainer and Kalauern then headed to Ayano's house to treat Irina who was seriously injured. Issei sees Rainer already leaving, just hoping that Irina is okay. Luffy then holds Luffy's shoulders. "Calm down, Issei, Irina will be fine," said Luffy, convincing Issei. Issei then nodded to understand with Luffy. Issei then recalled following Rie as the others. "Luffy, we should follow Butcho and the others," said Issei. "You're right. I'll go," said Zenovia. Luffy then looked towards Zenovia. "All right," replied Luffy. Luffy, Issei and Zenovia went to school to help Rias and others. Luffy and his two friends went to school. Luffy is the one who leads because of his quick speed. As they passed through some trees, Luffy then felt that someone was heading toward them. Luffy swiftly pulled Issei and Zenovia backwards to fall. Issei then regretted Luffy as suddenly pulled up as well as Zenovia. "Luffy, what are you doing?" Issei asked as he stood up. "There is someone," said Luffy seriously. Issei who sees Luffy serious then starts serious as well as looks around them. "Is it a wild devil?" Issei thought. Then came out of the bushes behind them. Luffy then realized the figure then attacked Gomu Gomu no Muchi. Luffy shouted as he extended his leg kicking the figure, but the figure seemed to know Luffy would attack her. The figure then avoided the attack from Luffy. Luffy was shocked because the figure could avoid his attack. "Who are you?" Luffy asked the figure. The figure has a pair of wings, wearing minimalist clothes and golden yellow hair. The figure then turned to show who she was. Luffy was shocked because the attacking figure was Lily. Luffy was really surprised to see Lily in front of her. "Lily." Lily then just stared at Luffy with a sharp gaze as she already knew who he was. Lily thought Luffy would be so surprised to know her. "What are you doing here?" Luffy then asked Lily plainly. Lily then felt weird with Luffy's attitude that seemed to still not understand what had happened. Lily then looked at Luffy with a staring look. "I'm here to kill you," said Lily coldly. Issei and Zenovia are shocked to hear Lily's words. Luffy sees Lily with an expressionless neutral look. "Why?" asked Luffy. "Because you're a problem for me, so I have to kill you," replied Lily again coldly. "Why do you want to kill me? Are not we friends?" said Luffy with a plain smile. Lily then looked at Luffy with a cold look. Issei still saw Lily with a sharp gaze, but when he saw Lily's body that had little clothes, it made Issei put on a perverted face. Lily saw Issei with his face and then stared at Luffy. "That should be like you looking at me," said Lily, pointing at Issei. Issei is pointed out then conscious of his horny action. "What do you mean?" Luffy asked plainly. Lily then disappointed with the innocent nature of Luffy. Lily then began preparing to attack Luffy again. Luffy who saw Lily who would attack him then looked silent. Lily then jumps towards Luffy at a very fast pace. Lily then uses her sharp nails to puff Luffy. "Luffy, watch out!" Issei shouted at Lily who would attack Luffy. Luffy let Lily strike him. Lily then stood behind Luffy with a confused expression. There was blood pouring out of the chest from Lily's strike. "Why did not he dodge?" Issei asks, confused as well as Zenovia. Lily, who saw Luffy not avoid her, was also confused. Luffy still sees Lily with a neutral look. "Why didn't you dodge?" Lily asked. "Because I do not want to fight you, I just want to talk to you," said Luffy firmly. Luffy still feels weird with Lily because she suddenly strikes him, but when they date Lily looks very happy. "Why are you not against me?" Lily asked grimly, thinking Luffy wasn't worth her time. "Because you're my friend," replied Luffy with a smile. Lily then surprised to hear Luffy say that she was his friend. Lily did not expect Luffy would say such a thing in front of her. "Luffy, are you okay?" Issei then approached the wounded Luffy. "Issei, Zenova, you should follow Ria," said Luffy firmly. "Do not joke, I'll help you," Issei said firmly. "No, Rias is going to need you now, you should help Rias now," said Luffy. Issei was quite surprised to hear the words from Luffy, who was so calm even though he was hurt. "All right, but you have to keep yourself," said Issei, worried. Luffy then wore his cheerful face toward Issei. Issei trusts in Luffy. Issei then looks at Zenovia. "Come on," said Issei. Zenovia then nodded understanding. Zenovia looked towards Luffy, who was still smiling at them, then Zenovia ran with Issei to school. Luffy still looks at Lily, who still looks at him with a sharp gaze. "So you're going to fight me?" Lily asked with a sharp gaze. "No," replied Luffy. Lily then confused with the words from Luffy. Luffy then looked at Lily with a staring look. "I will not fight you," Luffy shouted firmly. In other places. "Attack the devils," shouted one of the soldiers. Some fallen angels fell down and attacked a group of devils who were heading to school. A woman wore glasses and then brought a mirror and then bounced off the fallen angel. "They are too many," said Tsubaki. "Beware, they keep attacking," said Momo. The fallen fell down and attacked the Tsubaki group who were going to school after their boss said there would be something wrong in school. "We have to get to the school soon," said Tomo. "Well, it seems like I'm going to take care of this," said Zoro, pulling one of his swords and then pointing them to the fallen angels. "It's Shiryu, 36-pound cannon." Zoro then attacked the falling angel crowd. The angels fell down after being struck by Zoro's powerful attack. Zoro then regained his sword. "Well, why do I feel too strong, huh?" said Zoro thinking. But while thinking, Zoro's head was suddenly over. Momo called from behind. "What you want?" Zoro shouted as he head suddenly at the hour. "We have to go to school immediately," told Momo. "That's right, not when it's your own self," Mirimo scorned Tomo. "Do not call me with such a name, damn it," Zoro shouted. "It's cool, Zoro, we have to go to school," said Tsubaki. "I understand." Zoro then understood the words from Tsubaki. When they talk, suddenly a bunch of angels fall again towards them quickly. Zoro was aware of the angels falling down with his observation haki. It looks like today I'm not going to get bored again," said Zoro, looking at the fallen angels with a smile. Zoro then attacked the fallen angels with his sword. The Sona peerage saw this, feeling amazed by his zooming style. "Have you ever seen him use his 3 swords at once?" Riot asked. "No, we have never seen him use his 3 swords at once," replied Tsubaki while correcting her glasses that would fall. "Hey, don't just look." Zoro shook while looking back. The peerage women Sona then felt annoyed with Zoro, who mocked them. The Sona peerage then did not want to lose to Zoro. They then attacked the fallen angel simultaneously, so the fallen angels had no hope of defeating them. "Phew, they finally lose," said Ria as she looked at the situation. "We're safe," Tsubasa said, looking at the situation as well. Zoro then nodded his sword again, thinking fallen were gone, the kokubael's men were gone, but when they still felt safe, suddenly came again angels fell. Kakaino's sons. It looks like we cannot get to school quickly," said Zoro, looking at a bunch of angels falling towards them. "I think you're right, Zoro-san," said Raruko, preparing for more fallen angels. In school. The Ria's group is currently fighting against some of Kokubael's subordinates. Seeing Kokubael watching the battle of Rias with the monster who has been called by Kokubael. Akino and Rias are fighting against giant dogs like Cerberus. Issei against one of the Cerberus twins with hardship assisted by Kiba. "Hahaha, this is really entertaining," said Kokubael, looking at Rias and the others fighting against the Cerberus with difficulty. "Damn, what should we do?" Issei asked, who is now exhausted. "I do not know, but we have to survive," said Kiba as he swung his sword towards Cerberus quickly but not too influential with Cerberus. It is also seen Valper being raised by a sacred sword. A little more, Valper said with enthusiasm to see his ritual soon finish. Damn, it looks like his ritual will be finished soon, Issei said. We have to stop him. Kiba then ran to Valper to destroy the sacred sword. Fried, who knew it, then prevented Kiba. Hey, do not be in a hurry, Devil grinned Fried. Kiba then felt furious with Fried, who suddenly prevented him from going to Valper. Think. Kiba then attacked Fried with his sword. Kiba, beware, shouting in the direction of Kiba. Issei. Help him, Ria's order. Issei then nodded to understand with his bucho, then went straight to Kiba to help her. Wait, Issei, Kiba suddenly shouted to Issei. What is it, Kiba? Issei asked, confused. You're better off against the fallen angel, said Kiba, pointing at kokubael. Let me fight this weird guy, said Kiba. All right. Issei then saw kokubael with anger because had wounded his friends. Kokubael saw Issei just smiling with arrogance. Oh, you want to fight me directly? Asked kokubael. Issei did not say a word. Issei then walked towards kokubael with anger. Wait, Issei, Ria suddenly called Issei. Issei then turned to see his bucho was walking towards her. We have to attack him simultaneously, Ria said with a smile. Issei smiled, nodding understanding. Ria then smiled at seeing Issei understand with her. Well, now transfer your magic energy to me, Ria's order. All right, bucho, said Issei firmly. Boost, 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 boost. There was a mechanical sound from the gauntlet. Ria then held Issei's hand to prepare for the energy of magic from Issei. Transfer. There was another Issei mechanical sound. Ria then felt that there was a magic energy flowing inside her very strongly. Dress up, then look at kokubael with a sharp gaze. Well, this is your end, Ria said firmly. Kokubael heard Ria's words, then laughing arrogantly. Ha 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 ha, you think with a lot of magic energy inside you'll defeat me? Said kokubael. Ria's then releasing its crushing energy with a very large size. Akino and the others were then surprised to see the strength of Ria's now. Feel this, Ria shouted at his attack on kokubael. Kokubael smiled at the huge attack. Kokubael then throws Ria's attack in the other direction. What? Ria's surprised to see her attack deflected very easily. Impossible. Bucho's assault was just deflected. Do not think that such an attack could defeat me, kokubael's jest. Finally done. Valper then looked happy when he saw his ritual finally finished. Unlucky, his ritual is over. Kiba saw Valper already completing his ritual. Unlucky, Issei's grief. X. With Luffy. Seeing now Luffy was full of injuries due to a lethal attack from Lily, seeing Luffy still standing upright after being hit by an attack from Lily. Why did not you strike me? Lily shouted indignantly at Luffy. Because, Luffy looks hesitant to say one word. Lily was curious about Luffy's words. Because you're my friend, replied Luffy firmly. Lily then surprised to hear the words from Luffy. Lily had heard that word from Luffy repeatedly. I'm not your friend, Lily shouted. Luffy looks unconcerned by the words from Lily, who are now really annoyed to the really stubborn Luffy. Listen, yes, I was just playing with you, I just wanted to make you surprised that I would kill you, said Lily with a cool smile. You will not kill me, said Luffy still firmly despite the blood that filled his body. Lily gets very annoyed now. Stop thinking I'm your friend, I am here to kill you. Lily shouted with anger. Luffy just stares at Lily with a neutral look, then smiling. Lily then regrets seeing Luffy's sudden face smiling. This time I'm going to kill you, Lily attacked Luffy once again. This time Lily tried to attack Luffy's face. Luffy just smiled looking at Lily, who would attack him. Lily then tried to attack Luffy's face, but Luffy did try to stop it. Luffy realizes that Lily is debating. Luffy then turns to see Lily, who is thinking of something. Lily was confused because she could not attack Luffy again. Lily then looked at Luffy with a neutral look. Master Luffy, apostrophe. Luffy then heard a voice calling him. Luffy then looked up to see who called him from above. Masterl, are you okay? Apostrophe. It turns out that the caller is Rainerer with Kalauerner, who seems to have delivered Arena. Luffy smiled at seeing Rainerer and Kalauerner coming. Rainerer and Kalauerner saw Luffy's body full of sores and then worried about Luffy. Yo, Kalauerner, Rainerer. Luffy does not care about his body full of wounds. Rainerer and Kalauerner then approached Luffy. Luffy smiled at the fallen angels. Lily, who saw both Rainerer and Kalauerner, was just surprised. Are you all right, Master Luffy? Rainer asked again. I'm fine, Shihishi, said Luffy plainly. What a fine thing, your body must hurt, said Rainer loudly. Luffy just smiled to hear Rainer and Kalauner angry. Lily, who saw this, felt her plan failed. She could not take on both fallen angels. It seems my mission failed, Lily said with annoyance. Lily then flew away from Luffy and the two angels fell down. Lily saw Luffy again, who seemed to be talking to each other. Luffy, who saw Lily, went just wondering. Did the succubus hurt you, Luffy? Rainer asked Luffy. Well, I'm going to pursue it, said Kalauner. Wait. Luffy then prevents Kalauner, do not chase her, continued Luffy. Why, Master Luffy? Rainer asked. Nothing, Shihishi, said Luffy plainly. Rainer and Kalauner were just sweat drops seeing their masters. Rainer was convinced succubus was his master's attacker, but his master was protecting the succubus. Well, then, now we should go home with Luffy, said Rainer. No, I have to go to school to help Riaz and the others, said Luffy firmly. But that's not possible, take a look at your body now full of injuries. Kalauner tried to remind her master this. I do not care, I have to help Riaz and the others with hard work. Luffy then ran to school quickly. Wait for us, master. Rainer and Kalauner followed Luffy. In school. The Butcho and the others are now really desperate. Now Kiba seems helpless against Freed because Freed has already used the sacred sword as a result of Valper. You cannot destroy this sword, said Valper. Damn. Kiba then tries to attack Freed again at an unusual speed. Freed easily fought off Kiba's attack that brutally attacked. Kiba looked really angry now. Ha 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 ha, do not force yourself, devil. Freed mocks and repel all attacks from Kiba. Freed then fired Kiba with a very powerful force. Kiba, who was hit by a very strong attack, slammed then crashed back. Kiba. The whole Riaz group looks worried about Kiba. Damn, how can this be? Zenovia looks hurt pretty badly against Freed. Do I have to call it now? Continued Zenovia. Issei also seems to impose himself. Despite wearing his dragon's armor mode, he cannot defeat kokubael easily. Just got here, just your devil's power? Kokubael's jesting group. Riaz only stares at kokubael with annoyance. Well, maybe I'll end this. Kokubael then pulls out a spear of light with a very large size. Kokubael then directed him toward Riaz, who looked now unable to move. Riaz looked helpless now. Die! Kokubael shouted. Butcho! Shouted all peerage makeup. Riaz closed her eyes to not see the spear of light to get to her. Riaz is now totally desperate. Luffy, said Riaz slowly. When the spear of light was almost about to hit Riaz, there was someone at a very rapid pace to prevent the spear from hitting Riaz. Riaz and the others looked to see who helped her. Luffy. Riaz, seeing the one who helped her was none other than Luffy himself. The Riaz peerage looked happy when they saw their Butcho survive the giant spear. Peerage then looked at Luffy. Luffy Kunakino is surprised to see Luffy as well as the other servants. Luffy, who was fending off the enormous kokubael spear. Luffy looked tired and weak because his body was now seriously injured. Luffy then looked at kokubael with anger. Luffy was now really upset. The Butcho saw that Luffy's body was full of wounds and was just shocked and wondering. What happened to you, Luffy? Apostrophe. Chapter 27. The appearance of the Green Swordsman. Sona peerage. Hurry up, Zoro, said Momo irritably because Zoro was seen running quite slowly. Don't tell me, you can fly while I run, where is your logic? Zoro shouted irritably. Never mind, you two, don't fight, said Tsubaki, trying to calm the two men. Are we almost there? Asked Tomo. Yes, we are almost there. Riaya was grateful that she was almost there to go to school. Zoro looked like he had just smiled because Tsubaki said that their opponent was one of the top fallen angels. Zoro seems to feel there will be a challenge. It will be very interesting, said Zoro, already preparing to hold the sword. Tsubaki saw Zoro just smiled as he was so eager to fight. Tsubaki was eager to see Zoro fight. Oh yes, I forgot, can you tell me again your friend that you often tell me, asked Riaya. Zoro then looked at Riaya, who seemed curious about one of his friends. Zoro then smiled at Riaya. Well, I'll tell you, Zoro said as he ran. He often wears a straw hat, he has a stupid, innocent nature and often smiles to others, said Zoro. Wow, I never thought that there was someone like you in this world, Momo sneered. Zoro then felt annoyed with the words from Momo, who immediately mocked him. Sona's peerage then laughed at the words from Momo except Tsubaki. Tsubaki is surprised to hear Zoro's explanation of one of his friends. Tsubaki feels that she seems to have seen someone with the same characteristics as Zoro's explanation. He always believed and protected his friends. He was also a stubborn person, Zoro continued. Tsubaki once again felt that she saw a stubborn person in his school. Tsubaki then thought about Luffy because Luffy most closely resembled the features Zoro had mentioned. Wow, he seems like a good person, said Tsubasa. Yes, he is indeed a good person, said Zoro, agreed with Tsubasa. Tsubaki is still thinking about Luffy because she is sure that Zoro's friend whom Zoro has told her is Luffy. Tsubaki then took away the thought for a moment, then looked ahead and saw that school was near. Well, we are now almost at school, we should be together, no one will split up, told Tsubaki. All the girls there nodded understanding. Did you hear Zoro? Tsubaki then asked Zoro, but Tsubaki didn't see. Where is he going? Asked Riaya, not to see Zoro. All of Sana's peerages were all shocked because they didn't see Zoro near them. Tsubaki then held his forehead. Where is Mirimo? Momo shouted irritably. Don't tell me he's lost. Ruruko shouted. You idiot, shouted all of Sana's peerage except Tsubaki, who seemed to be holding her forehead. With Zoro. Zoro was now running in a different direction. Zoro looked confused because Tsubaki and the others suddenly disappeared. Where are they? Asked Zoro, confused because he did not see Tsubaki and the others. Basic, they always get lost, said Zoro irritably. Zoro then looked forward to feeling that if there was someone. Zoro then used his observation to check who was coming. Oh, it seems like there are still some remaining fallen angels. Okay, I'll serve you all, said Zoro. Zoro then pulled out his two swords at once. Zoro then was now preparing to fight all the fallen angels. Zoro's smile seemed to be thirsty for the fight. All right, go forward all of you, said Zoro with enthusiasm. In school. Looks like the atmosphere in school is so tense that Luffy, whose body is injured, is watching kokubael sharply. Rias, who saw Luffy's body, was just wondering where to get the many injuries. Luffy, are you okay? Rias asked worriedly. Luffy then looked at Rias with a smile. I'm fine, Luffy answered as he raised his thumb towards Rias. Rias knows that Luffy doesn't look fine, but Luffy seems to be trying not to worry. Akino then flew towards Luffy. Luffy-kun, are you okay? Asked Akino to Luffy. I'm fine, Akino, Luffy said to Akino. Akino also knew that Luffy looked in pain with a lot of cuts on his body like that. Akino then tried to cure Luffy. It's not the time to think about my body, we should first focus on the opponent in front of us, said Luffy, looking at kokubael angrily. Kokubael, who saw Luffy, was only surprised because he didn't think that a human could fend off his huge spear of light. Kokubael then smiled at Luffy. Oh, it looks like you are not an ordinary human, said Kokubael. I'm just an ordinary human and this human will defeat you, Luffy shouted confidently. Kokubael, who heard Luffy, then laughed out loud at the words of the man in front of him who said that he would defeat him. Ha 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 ha, don't be too confident, human, you're just the lowest race ever created, he said Kokubael. Luffy only stared at Kokubael, neutral, not provoked by the words of Kokubael. Asia and the others are grateful that Luffy will come, especially Issei and Zenovia, who see Luffy, but they are confused because Luffy is full of wounds. Issei wonders if Luffy fought against the succubus at all. Luffy, you better have a rest first, suggested Rias. No, you are the one who must rest, said Luffy stubbornly. Rias just sighs at Luffy's stubbornness while Akino just chuckles at Luffy, who is so stubborn. Luffy is getting ready to fight one of the monsters called kokubael, Cerberus. Luffy looked at Cerberus sharply. The Cerberus who saw Luffy then attacked Luffy. Watch out, Luffy senpai, Kaneko shouted, seeing that Cerberus was heading towards Luffy. Luffy then just smiled seeing Cerberus pointing at him. Luffy then put on a fighting pose. Cerberus then lunged at Luffy, but Luffy quickly avoided the attack from Cerberus. Ria sees Luffy avoiding the Cerberus attack, just feeling relieved. Akino then tries to help Luffy but is held by Issei. Why are you preventing me, Issei? I have to help Luffy-kun, said Akino. Luffy will be fine, trust him, said Issei, believing. Akino was only shocked by the words of Issei. Akino and then looked at the battle between Luffy and Cerberus. Luffy kept avoiding attacks from Cerberus quickly, but Luffy couldn't just dodge it. Gomu Gomu no pistol, Luffy shouted as he extended his arm to attack Cerberus. Cerberus then felt the pain in his face because it was hit by Luffy until it bounced back far enough. Kokubael and Valper are shocked to see Luffy's arms stretch like rubber. Valper looks interested with Luffy, wondering what strength Luffy uses. Kokubael then regained consciousness from his shock and then saw Luffy sharply. Riaz and the others are only cooking wood not to be surprised because they have seen Luffy's power, except Zenovia, who is shocked to see Luffy because he can extend her arms. "Is that a sacred gear?" Zenovia asked. "No, it's not a sacred gear," Kaneko answered suddenly. Zenovia then looks at Kaneko, who seems to know Luffy's true strength. "Do you know what strength the Straw Hats use?" Zenovia asked. "Yes, that is the power of a devil fruit," Kaneko answered with her flat face. Devil fruit? Zenovia is confused because she never heard of a devil fruit at all. Right, Luffy Senpai ate one of the devil's fruits, the Gomu Gomu fruit that made his body elastic like rubber, Kaneko answered curtly. Zenovia just pauses to hear the explanation from Kaneko. She has never heard of any fruit that can make people have a certain power. Zenovia then returns to see Luffy's fight with Cerberus. Gomu Gomu no pistol. Luffy once again attacked Cerberus, but Cerberus seemed like it would no longer be affected. The Cerberus then tried to scratch Luffy, but Luffy once again avoided the claw attack. Gomu Gomu no bazooka. Luffy once again hit the Cerberus with both hands. The Cerberus then bounced back very quickly. Another Cerberus then attacked Luffy too. Luffy, who saw another Cerberus, then tried to avoid it, but Luffy looked tired, so he couldn't avoid the attack from Cerberus one more. Luffy then bounced far enough away from the attack from Cerberus. Riaz and the others seemed worried because Luffy's body would be more severely affected by the attack from Cerberus. "Ha ha 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 ha, look at that man, he is dead," said Kokubael, seeing Luffy's thrown direction near one of the school buildings. "Luffy!" Riaz shouted, fearing something happened to Luffy. Issei looked angry at Cerberus attacking Luffy. Kiba also looked unhappy. Issei then tries to attack Cerberus. "Wait. When you want to attack Cerberus, there is a sound." It turns out that the sound is Luffy's voice. "Luffy!" Riaz then headed to Luffy's place. Luffy looked more exhausted because of the attack from Cerberus. Kokubael and Valper looked surprised to see Luffy still standing up even though he was attacked by Cerberus. Ordinary people should die immediately after being attacked by Cerberus. "Luffy, that's enough, you may die," said Riaz with a little dead water running down her cheeks, worrying about Luffy. Luffy then looked at Riaz, who was worried, with Luffy still confident, and smiled at Riaz. "Just relax, Riaz, I can still fight," said Luffy with a smile. Riaz is still unable to calmly see Luffy, who seems still stubborn. Luffy then stands up preparing to fight the two Cerberus. "Kiba." Luffy then called Kiba. Kiba then felt called and looked at Luffy, who called him. Kiba saw Luffy wondering why he called him. "I will fight the two Cerberus, you can fight that strange person," Luffy said, pointing at Freed. Kiba was surprised to hear Luffy's words and smiled happily to understand Luffy's words. "All right," said Kiba with a smile. Kiba then looked at Freed with a sharp look. Freed still looked at Kiba with a condescending look, thinking that Kiba would not be able to defeat him. "I'll beat you," said Kiba, still confident. Kiba then ran towards Freed trying to attack him. Freed, who saw Kiba who was heading towards him, just smiled. Kiba and Freed then fought using their swords with each other. Riaz, who saw Kiba's battle and Freed, just wondered why Luffy told Kiba to fight Freed. "Why did you tell Kiba to fight Freed, Luffy?" Riaz asked. "Didn't Kiba want to destroy the sword?" "If he wants to destroy the sword, he must do it with his own hands," said Luffy firmly with a smile. Riaz then understands the intention of Luffy. Kiba himself who had to fight Freed, so Kiba could be better because the problem could be solved alone. "If I will defeat the two creatures," said Luffy, who would now release his remaining energy. The Cerberus, who saw Luffy, looked even more furious at Luffy, without being told to go back and attack Luffy quickly. Luffy, who saw the two Cerberus who would attack him, just smiled. Luffy then put on his fighting pose again. "Armament!" Luffy shouted. Suddenly Luffy's hand turned black. The Cerberus, who saw Luffy's black hands, feel unconcerned. Luffy then prepares to attack the two Cerberus. Gomu Gomu no twin pistol. Luffy then used both of his arms, which had been coated by Haki, attacking both Cerberus. The Cerberus tried to avoid Luffy's attack, but it was too late because Luffy had attacked quite quickly. Both Cerberus then felt Luffy's punch that had been coated by Haki. The two creatures then bounced backwards. Not until there, Luffy then headed to the two creatures to attack him again. Luffy then jumped up. Gomu Gomu no Hakono. Luffy shouted while stepping on one of the Cerberus by using his haki again. The Cerberus then felt pain in his back when Luffy stepped on it. Luffy then looked at one of the Cerberus who seemed to be trying to get up. Luffy then attacked one of the Cerberus. Gomu Gomu no Hawk Bazooka. Luffy shouted, directly attacking the Cerberus until it bounced away. The Cerberus then can't get up again because Luffy's punch is so strong that it boils down. Luffy then saw another Cerberus who seemed to be able to stand up. "I'll end this," Luffy shouted. Luffy then recoated his hand with haki again, preparing to attack Cerberus. Gomu Gomu no. Luffy then approached Cerberus to attack Cerberus again. Hawk Bullet. Luffy then hit Cerberus's stomach very strongly. The Cerberus then bounced back so fast that it hit the school building behind it. Rias and the others just can't believe the one in front of them. The Cerberus then disappeared with the other Cerberus. Rias still doesn't believe seeing Luffy beating Cerberus with a body full of wounds like that. "He is so strong," Asia said, looking at Luffy. Luffy then looked at Rias and the others while smiling proudly because he had defeated both Cerberus quite difficult. Valper was even more interested in Luffy's power, which could have stretched his arms and legs, now could blacken his hands like a steel and defeat the two Cerberus very easily. "Right now we will wait for Kiba's fight," Luffy said while looking at Kiba fighting Freed. Kiba still seems to have a difficult time to defeat Freed with his holy sword. "TCH, I must be able to destroy that sword," Kiba growled. Capital H, A, 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 H, A. "Just try if you can, devil," said Freed mockingly. Kiba continued to cut Freed, but Freed continued to block all attacks from Freed. Kiba then tried to cut Freed's leg, but Freed could block it. Kiba and Freed continued to fight each other. Luffy and the others see this battle just silent. Luffy watched Kiba's fight by sitting on the ground while heaving his hands. Rias, who saw Luffy, just confused because he could just calm down. "Why can you be so calm, Luffy?" Rias asked. "Because I believe that Kiba can defeat that strange person," Luffy said confidently. Rias was shocked to hear Luffy's words. Luffy had believed that Kiba would defeat Freed. If Luffy believes, she must also believe. Kiba continued to attack Freed, but Freed still blocked the attack from Kiba. Freed then felt tired because he kept blocking Kiba's attack and then jumped back to get away from Kiba. "Oh, damn, it turns out that the devil also has a pretty big stamina," said Freed, realizing that he was a devil. Kiba saw Freed just feeling annoyed that he suddenly jumped backwards. Kiba then looked towards Valper. "So you just keep quiet?" Kiba asked, looking sharply at Valper. "I don't think it's only you who are still alive," said Valper, looking at Kiba. Kiba looks angry when Valper says that. Luffy seems to wonder why Kiba is so angry. With its Sona and other. Sona seemed to be making a protector at the school so that humans could not see what was happening in the school. Sona is not alone, looks like her peerages are helping her. "Don't stop, we must make this protector strong," said Sona, telling the peerage. "Good, chairman," shouted all of Sona's peerage. "Where is Marimaru?" growled Momo. "Maybe he was lost in the city," Saji said. "Wait, is Zoro lost?" Sona then realized that Zoro was not seen with the peerage. Sona's peerages were confused to explain this to their chairman. Sona then looked at the peerage one by one with probing eyes. "No, sorry, chairman, we parted with him," said Riaya softly. Sona then sighed resignedly to see her peerages, who seemed to look scared. Sona then smiled at the peerage. "It's okay," said Sona, trying to comfort her peerage. The peerage then smiled, seeing their chairman didn't seem angry. Sona just sighed again, considering where Zoro is now. "Sis, so stupid, I want to know where he is now?" Sona asked irritably. "Who are you saying stupid?" Sona then was shocked to hear a voice behind them. Sona's peerage then got ready to put on a fighting pose, and it turned out that the person who released the voice was Zoro. "Zoro," said Sona in the peerage. "Where have you been? I'm looking for you," said Zoro angrily. Tsubaki then hit Zoro's head very quickly, so Zoro was shocked. "It's precisely we who have to say that," Tsubaki shouted angrily. Zoro looked in pain when Tsubaki hit his head. Sona then looked happy because Zoro had arrived at the school, while the Sona peerage still looked upset with Zoro. "Hey!" Zoro shouted angrily at Tsubaki. "That's because it's your fault. You scared us," Tsubaki said, still angry. Zoro then stroked his head that had been hit by Tsubasa hard enough that it appeared there was a big bump on Zoro's head. Zoro was a little annoyed with the attitude of the girls in Sana's group. "So what are you doing?" asked Zoro. "We are making a protector," said Riaya. "Protector? What for?" asked Zoro again. "So that the area around here is not affected," Tsubaki answered. "Impact? What impact?" Zoro asked again. "Of course the impact of the fight from the inside, stupid," Tomo said irritably. Zoro was surprised to hear that someone was fighting in this protector. Zoro then smiled happily. "Oh, so someone is fighting inside," said Zoro to Sona. Sona then looked at Zoro and seemed to realize Zoro. Zoro seemed interested when someone was fighting. "Then I'll enter," said Zoro. "What? Don't be stupid, in this protector there is one of the higher-ups of the fallen angel," said Tomo. Zoro then added a smile when he heard that there was a high-ranking angel falling inside the protector in front of him. Zoro then looked at Sona. "Can I come in?" said Zoro to Sona. Sona, who understood Zoro's intentions, then sighed resignedly. "Okay, you can enter," said Sona. "But the chairman." "It's okay, he won't die easily," said Sona. Zoro seemed happy because Sona allowed him in. Zoro then walked to school. Tsubaki then opens a little hole for Zoro to enter. "Oh yeah, there you will meet the person I talked about that day," said Sona. "You mean people who have strange powers?" said Zoro. "Yes," replied Sona. Zoro then felt this would be more interesting. Zoro then entered the school environment. Zoro hopes that tonight will be very interesting. Sona hopes that Zoro is okay. With the Luffy and the others. "Wow," said Luffy, looking at Kiba, who seemed to make him amazed. Luffy looked at Kiba, who was now quite different, as Kiba was now angry with several swords appearing around him. Rias then realized what had happened. "This is Baku's Branniker," continued Akino. Luffy then heard Akino that Kiba now seemed to be releasing a strong force. "Balance breaker," said Luffy, but wrongly. "Balance breaker." Akino then tried to help Luffy. "Blaine Blakir," but Luffy seemed unable to memorize it. Akino continues to teach Luffy to spell it, but Luffy continues to feel troubled. Kaneko, who sees this incident, only sweat drops on Luffy and Akino. Kaneko didn't think they could still joke at a time like this. Kiba saw Valper and Freed with a sharp look. Valper, who was now still surprised by what he saw. The child in front of him suddenly could release Balance Breaker. "How can you?" Valper said, surprised to see Kiba. Kiba then walked towards Freed, who was carrying a holy sword. Freed looked scared. Kiba then ran towards Freed quickly. Freed then was shocked to see Kiba heading towards him. Kiba then used his sword to attack Freed. Freed then blocked the attack from Kiba, but he didn't look troubled. "Damn, why did he suddenly become so strong?" Freed's grim looked at Kiba. Kiba then continued to slash Freed very quickly. Freed looked troubled to hold back all of Kiba's slashes, which were now so strong and fast. Kiba then slashed his sword so strong that Freed's holy sword broke. "What?" Freed did not believe what he saw. Kiba then once again slashed Freed, so Freed then felt the pain in his chest due to being slashed by Kiba. Freed then fell to the ground holding his chest, which had been hit. Kiba saw that Freed, who was in pain, just stared neutrally. Kiba then looked at the Valper, who looked like he was still shocked by what he saw. "How can?" Valper said, looking at Kiba. Luffy looked at Kiba with a smile. "Wow, it turns out Baleen Break is really a very strong force," said Luffy, looking at Kiba. Akino just smiled, seeing that Luffy still can't memorize the name Balance Breaker. Kaneko added sweat to see Luffy, and Rias just smiled. Valper looked scared now seeing Kiba. Valper then tried to think about Kiba's Balance Breaker. "Maybe I can make another holy sword from this child." So, before Valper finished his words, his chest was being pierced by a light object. Luffy and the others were immediately shocked to see Valper stabbed. Valper then disappears after being pierced by the object. "You have done your job very hard, I have not needed you anymore," said kokubael. Apparently kokubael was the Valper murderer. Luffy, who saw Valper killed by his own partner, just looked angry. Luffy then looked at kokubael angrily. "Why are you killing your friends?" Luffy shouted angrily. Rias and the others were shocked to hear Luffy suddenly shout at kokubael. Rias saw Luffy look really very angry. Kokubael sees angry Luffy just confused and smiles proudly. "Because he is no longer useful," kokubael replied arrogantly. "Look now, Luffy is really angry." Luffy then walks towards kokubael with anger. Rias and the others see Luffy heading towards kokubael casually. Rias saw Luffy. Luffy kept walking towards kokubael with anger. Kokubael, who saw Luffy walking towards him, just smiled. Okay, I'll hit you, Luffy said firmly. Luffy then ran towards kokubael. Kokubael was surprised to see Luffy now running towards him. Kokubael then released a large spear of light, then attacked Luffy. Luffy, who saw the big spear of light, then dodged it quickly enough. Kokubael was shocked to see Luffy could avoid the spear of light with an injured body like that. Kokubael then took out a spear of light with a lot and pointed it at Luffy. Watch out, Luffy. Issei then saw a huge spear of light that would attack Luffy. Death to you, lowly creature, Kokubael shouted as he launched his spear of light towards Luffy. Luffy then dodged all the spears of light, but one spear of light then hit him. Damn, my wound made my body slow down, Luffy wailed while holding the wound, which was hit by a scratch from Kokubael's light spear. Ha 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 ha, look at humans, you will not be able to defeat a race that is higher than you, Kokubael said arrogantly. Rias then approached Luffy, worried about him. I'm fine, Rias, Luffy said to Rias. Rias is shocked by Luffy's words, then Rias is upset to see Luffy always saying it's okay even though he looks hurt quite badly. What do you mean it's okay? Look at you, Rias shouted to Luffy. Luffy then looked back to see Rias, who was now really angry with his selfish attitude. Take it easy, I will win, said Luffy to Rias with a smile. Rias then calms down with Luffy's words. Luffy then looks at Kokubael again with anger. I will not be able to lose to someone like you, Luffy said to Kokubael. Kokubael then gets upset with Luffy's words. Kokubael is really angry now because there is a human being insulting someone like him. Luffy then lifted his left hand to the side, then it looked like his hand seemed to palm, then Luffy's body was now slightly reddish and there was smoke surrounding it. Rias and the others who saw this were immediately shocked. They had seen this when Luffy fought against Razor. Zenovia is most shocked at Luffy's body. What will he do? Thought Zenovia. Luffy then pointed his left hand forward right towards Kokubael. Kokubael was confused with Luffy's body and what he was doing. Gomu Gomu no Jet Gun, Luffy shouted at Kokubael. Very quickly Luffy's hand then hit Kokubael's stomach right away. Kokubael then felt his stomach seemed to be hit by a very strong bullet. Kokubael then bounced back very quickly and crashed into the school building and fell to the ground. I forgot that he has the power like that, Issei said to see Luffy. Rias and the others then smiled to see Luffy successfully hit on Kokubael so strongly that Kokubael bounced off. Zenovia was really shocked to see what had happened. The boy named Luffy managed to hit one of the fallen angels higher-ups. Luffy then rushed forward to attack Kokubael again. Kokubael is now really angry because he has been humiliated by this man. Gomu Gomu no Jet Muchi. Luffy then kicked Kokubael from the side without the knowledge of Kokubael. Kokubael once again bounced back very quickly. It's not over there. Luffy then attacks Kokubael from behind him. Gomu Gomu no Jet Bazooka, Luffy shouted from behind Kokubael. Kokubael then bounced back very quickly and hit the building in front of him very quickly. Luffy then paused while looking at Kokubael, who seemed to have been a bit battered because he had hit him. Don't be happy about humans, shouted Kokubael, waking up from the building that was overflowing. Luffy saw Kokubael angry and smiled because he was strong enough to. Luffy then prepared to attack again. Not that easy. Kokubael then snapped a spear of light towards Luffy. Luffy, who saw him, then avoided him, but Haki Kenban Luffy then felt something behind him, and sure enough, there was a spear of light behind Luffy. Die. Kokubael then attacked Luffy from behind using his spear of light. Luffy, who is now unable to move freely, was then hit by the spear of light. Rias and the others then are shocked to see Luffy, who was hit by the spear of light, and then approaches Luffy. Luffy, Rias shouted to see that her loved one had already been sprawled and could not rise again. Kiba, who saw Kokubael who would attack Luffy again, then prevented it with his rising sacred gear sword. I won't let it, Kiba said firmly. Don't block me, lowly devil. Kokubael then attacked Kiba with his other spear of light. Kiba then blocked Kokubael's attack, but Kiba bounced back. Kiba then still stood up and prepared to attack Kokubael again. Boost, boost. Unaware of Kokubael, Issei then attacked him from behind Kokubael and then bounced back. Do not forget me, Issei shouted excitedly. Kokubael then looked at Issei with anger because he had hit him. Kokubael then smiled arrogantly towards Kiba and Issei. Okay, I'll fight you too, said Kokubael proudly. Looks like Luffy is now helpless by being hit by a large spear of light. Rias, Akino and Asia try to cure Luffy with their magic while Kaneko is guarding them. Luffy, hang on. Rias shouted seeing Luffy, but Luffy did not respond because he was almost unconscious. Luffy-kun, please don't die, said Akino while uttering her magic very large to cure Luffy. Hold Luffy-san, Asia said to see Luffy. Kaneko also looks shocked to see Luffy. She doesn't know that Luffy will be like this. Kaneko then looked at kokubael with anger. Kokubael is seen fighting with Issei and Kiba. Kiba, I will attack him from behind. Issei said. Okay, I will attack it from the front, said Kiba. The two Rias peeraged then attacked kokubael at the same time. Kokubael, who saw this, then smiled and then voiced his spear of light with so much. Don't lower me, lowly devil, kokubael shouted. The spear of light then attacked Kiba and Issei. Kiba and Issei were shocked to see the spear of light that was very much then exposed. Kiba and Issei were hit by kokubael's attack and then bounced back so strongly. Kokubael, who saw the two devils hit by an attack, then smiled. TCH, now I will kill that man, said kokubael seeing Luffy being healed by Rias and the others. Kaneko, who sees kokubael who will attack Luffy, then attacks kokubael. Don't block me, kokubael said while attacking Kaneko. Kaneko then bounced back. Kaneko, Rias shouted at Kaneko. Well, I'll end this, said kokubael. Kokubael then released a few spears of light to attack Luffy and the others. Rias doesn't know what to do now. If she avoids, then Luffy and the others will be hit by the attack. Rias then stands in front of Akino, Asia and Luffy, who is unconscious. I won't let you hurt my peerage. Butcho Akino saw her surprise lady. Then you will all die, said kokubael. We won't leave Luffy-san, Asia said. Akino nodded understanding. Well then, kokubael then got ready to attack Rias and the others. Die. Kokubael then launched his spear of light towards Rias and the others. Rias was getting ready for the attack. Issei and Kiba can't do anything now because they seem to have been quite tired from fighting. Rias then was getting ready to feel the spear of light. Nidoryu, 72-pound Ho, suddenly saw a wind scourge coming and attacking kokubael's spear of light. Kokubael was shocked to see all the spears of light suddenly bouncing. Rias and the others were also surprised to see that. Wow, it seems like I'm not late, a voice was heard. I think you might be able to be a formidable opponent. Seeing there is someone emerging from the trees, that person is a man has green hair, is dressed plainly in a green shirt, tall and seems to have 3 swords on his waist. Rias and the others who saw the man and then were shocked, as well as kokubael. Kokubael, who saw that person, then was upset that suddenly came. Who are you? Kokubael said to the man. Me? The man pointed at him. Of course, lowly creatures, said kokubael angrily. My name is Zoro, said the man with a smile. To be continued. End of chapter 27.